I'd like to congratulate John Suntress and his Word Balloon podcast on its 19th anniversary. Nobody covers the world of comics with in-depth interviews like John does, but I can do without his constant ripping of new Star Trek. Come on, man. Give it a rest.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. It's been called one of the top 3 real Comic-Cons in the USA. August 16th through the 18th. Discover Terrificon as it returns to the Mohegan Sun Expo Center in Uncasville, Connecticut. Terrificon showrunner Mitch Halleck has assembled his biggest and best comic creator guest list to date. Jim Lee, Scotty Young, Mark Waid, Adam Hughes, Jason Aaron, Charles Soule, Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, Brian Azzarello, alongside legends like Chris Claremont, Jerry Ordway, Howard Chaykin, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, Louise and Walter Simonson, Klaus Janson, Lee Weeks, and dozens more. Terrificon also brings you the actors who have brought your favorite superheroes to life on the big and small screens. Michael Rooker, Charlie Cox, Star Trek actors Walter Koenig, Nana Visitor, Armin Shimmerman, Ethan Peck, Celia Rose Gooding, and many more. That's Terrificon, August 16th through the 18th. For information on tickets and guests, visit Terrificon.com. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I feel like I'm talking to Reggie Jackson and his best baseball year. You name the athlete. Good, Caitlin Clark, I suppose I should include on that. Let's have some balance here. But truly, 5-time Eisner nominated for this year, Kelly Thompson. Welcome to Word Balloon.
Hey, John. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure, buddy. Seriously, as I was telling you off the air, wow. Is this your first Eisner nominated year?
No. I've won one.
All right. I apologize, Kel, because honestly, sometimes you lose track.
Listen, of course. We won in 2021 for Black Widow, Elena Casagrande and I, and Jordi Belair, though she did not get a trophy. Let's not start this off in a negative way, though. So we won in 2021, and I think I've got 4 other nominations, or maybe I've had 4 nominations prior to this year, something like that. We got nominated for Hawkeye one year, Leo and Jordy and I, which is partly why it's so fun for Birds of Prey to get nominated.
Sure.
Makes you feel like you're a team that people are noticing when you get together to make some comics. It feels good. And we got nominated for It's Jeff one year, but I think it was in a digital category. And then I also got a nod one year for writer. But yeah, the Black Widow is the only one I've won. So okay. Getting more nominations than I've gotten in my entire career in one year was not a bad day.
I bet. Sure. My God. No, that's terrific, truly. And of course, your prior nominees, and they all make sense because these are great runs that you've had in the past as well. I love that you've got the It's Jeff icon up there today as we're talking. And, I don't know how much we've talked about It's Jeff in the past, but I do want to talk about it. Why don't we start with that? And,
sure.
The idea of writing a pantomime, essentially, comic, and the way that it really was embraced. Did you I don't know, because I know Jeff started in Gwenpool. Were you writing Gwenpool when,
No. He did not start in Gwenpool. He started in West Coast Avengers.
Oh,
that the origin of Jeff is basically that Brodok, who is MODOK inside a hot body, made all these land sharks and was attacking Venice with them.
Got it.
And Stefano Caselli drew that first arc, and he drew that first issue. So he designed our land sharks. And I was keeping MODOK in after they dealt with Brodok. MODOK was going to be sticking around to help form like a evil Masters of Evil West Coast division kind of thing. And so we had this shark that Stefano had drawn in the background that just looked very concerned about his situation as a land shark. And I couldn't stop thinking about this shark that did not seem like he wanted to be there. And I think that plus my cats, who are amazing, sort of ended up being the inspiration for a few issues later in a thing involving MODOK. The land sharks appear again to try to kill the West Coast Avengers. And one of them is this runty baby Jeff, and Gwenpool adopts him there. From there, West Coast Avengers got canceled. Of course it did. And so I was writing a new Deadpool book, and I had Gwenpool drop him off with Deadpool. And he's like, why are you giving me this shark? And she's like, listen, you've always got a book. He needs to survive. So I'm putting him with a guy whose book always survives. And so he was in that run, and he sort of bounced around. I mean, whatever Gwen did worked, because he got his own book. He's had 2 Eisner nominations now.
Yeah.
He's very popular.
That's crazy. And it's so great.
Yeah.
And truly, all 5 nominations, well, of course, one of them is for Best Writer overall, but also all 4 really shows your different writing muscles in action, which is terrific.
Yeah, I sort of love that about it. Like, it's Jeff, it's Gurihiru. It's like a completely different thing than what we're doing on Birds of Prey with Leo and Jordy. And that's a completely different thing than what Madia and I are doing on The Cull. And that's a completely different thing than Meredith and I are doing in Black Cloak. So it feels really good to see those things all be recognized as having like a high quality and, something that you should maybe look at and, examine. I love that. I want to survive, so it's great.
Have you, it's obviously early and maybe too early to have numbers registered, but beyond Jeff, obviously huge success, Birds of Prey killing it, but the Image books, have you heard any word of mouth as far as ordering uptick from stores?
Oh, not really, but does that tick over to me? I don't know. Like, I'm not that, I guess if there was a huge uptick, Image would probably let us know, but no, I haven't seen anything like that. You hope that is going to help the word of mouth and, putting a higher focus on these things. Certainly I'm sure winning helps more, but, I'll take any good PR. Let's have it.
Amen. No, and it's great, truly. And I hope so. Certainly that's been my experience talking to other creators and stuff, and more so, maybe not the Eisners, but really just, and you've been killing it, my God, at Marvel for at least 7 years now. Is that how long you've been writing over at Marvel?
I think my first work there was in 2015.
Wow.
And I'm still doing It's Jeff with them, but I'm not really writing anything else with them now. So
I understand. But no, I was thinking about, Hawkeye and Captain Marvel and
yeah.
So many other, Gambit and Rogue,
Gambit and Rogue, Black Widow, Jessica Jones, Hawkeye, West Coast Avengers, Captain Marvel, Deadpool. I've had an amazing, it's a great gift I was given. I worked with so many great characters. A thing I was trying to work on when Axel Alonso was still there, that they ended up, I guess, firing me from. They don't really couch it that way. They're like, hey, we're going to try something different. And you're like, oh, okay, I've just been fired. But they did it the nice way, where Axel was like, do you have other characters you're really interested in? We want to look for you for something. And I'm like, well, if we're talking about X-Men, which we were, because the thing I got fired off of was an X-Men thing, or X related at least. I was like, well, Gambit and Rogue are my favorite characters. And they were like, oh yeah, we're thinking about doing a thing with that. We'll put you on the list. And then it became sort of my book to lose, basically. And, it's been great. Gambit and Rogue especially has been fun over the last couple months. I am not watching the Disney series right now for a complicated, stupid reason I won't bore anyone with, but I've seen so much fun fan reaction and positive, and I've been a huge uptick in my emails of people asking me like they can't find the trades and people recommending them. So it's been really cool to see people rediscovering that, even though they all just rediscovered, a lot of them rediscovered it a few years ago when the books were coming out, so it's
Sure.
fun. It's been fun.
Well, all right, forgive me, but I will ask, because honestly, it is something I've asked other creators as well. When you leave a book like that and then it comes back, I think Stephanie Phillips right now is writing a Gambit Rogue thing, but it was announced. But sometimes when you're off a book and another creator takes over, I've said this to guys before. It's like, oh man, my girlfriend is seeing somebody else now. And so is it kind of like that? Is it? I mean, and forgive me for prying, but I am curious if it cuts both ways.
I don't know that I've ever thought about it like that, but I do think I'm someone who struggles with sort of like jealousy and pettiness. Like I recognize those as being qualities in myself that I definitely have, but I do not want to nurture. And so I try to be really cognizant of like, why do you feel jealous of this or petty about this? Like, it's usually some kind of insecurity in your own thing. So I try really hard to not be that way. I think I do get sensitive about characters I super care about, because especially with writers I don't know,
Sure.
or writers who don't reach out. Like some people, like Gail Simone is writing Rogue and Gambit now, and like she reached out
Okay.
and asked me some questions and stuff, which I find incredibly cool. Like I don't expect her to use anything I said or whatever, but she apparently read some stuff, liked or had questions about what I was doing, and like so we have follow-up conversations, and those are amazing. I think it's always better when you can do that. And how I felt when she did that made me like think about making sure to redouble my efforts when I'm in that position. Because sometimes I make an effort, but not a super effort.
Well,
You're like, oh, I sent an email, or I said a thing on Twitter, and then nothing.
no, I get it, and the onus I would say is the person that's taking over to say, hey, I want to continue this thing that you started, and that's great that Gail is doing that. It doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me, frankly, but no, man, it's paying it forward. I get it, and I think that's direct. And also, God, especially when you create a character and someone else takes it over, it's like, oh God, I think it's a high compliment that you've added something to either the DC or Marvel universe, and that it has legs and continues beyond you.
Yeah, I mean I think that's why it's really important to excavate it if you're having those feelings, because the only way to do this successfully is if tons of people take your thing after you're quote unquote done with it and play with it. If they don't, then you failed. So I think that's an excellent reason to excavate if you're having like petty or jealous feelings, or salty feelings maybe are a better descriptor, about something someone's doing or a job you perceive someone got that like maybe you would have liked to have or something. I mean, I just think it's the absolute measure of success to see them picking up the toys that you've left behind. So you got to sort of get comfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I realize that are you DC air quotes exclusive right now, or
No.
okay.
No.
Then with that in mind, and have you said everything you want to say about Black Widow, about Carol, about Kate Bishop, etc.?
I mean, not ever for Carol, but I've certainly said enough for
Sure.
now. I think more than enough. I definitely, I didn't want that run to end, because endings like that are always bittersweet, but I knew it was time. I could feel it. I think we could all feel it. Like, Marvel was very happy, I think, to have a successful book that could run a long run like that, but it doesn't mean they're not excited to like do a big relaunch, especially when they've got new movies and TV shows that they can synergize with a little bit, because every little bit helps with comic sales, as we all know. So I just felt like it was time. I definitely don't feel like I'm done with characters like Kate or Jessica or Natasha, where I had shorter runs. I was very excited about doing more with Black Widow. It just sort of didn't work out. I mean, when I didn't get re-signed for the exclusive, it meant I had to sort of change where I could direct my focus. And it meant I couldn't really pursue the Black Widow book anymore because I needed to wrap up Captain Marvel the way I needed to wrap it up. And I needed to be pushing for other things outside of that. So, some stuff you'd like to do. I mean, like maybe I'll get to come back to the character at some point. That would be great. I'd love to have that kind of career where I get to come back and I've wanted and it's fun. But, sometimes the best laid plans, right? I mean, you got to follow the sort of current.
Understood. And also, again, I think your creator-owned success has been thriving, and that's wonderful to see. And again, that's why getting the acknowledgement through the Eisner nominations are fantastic for things like Black Colt and the Call. So
yeah, on Black Cloak, we've got a new issue starting up. We've got a new arc starting up in August, issue 7, and it was a real choice to keep it going because now that the Substack money, which really only funded the first volume, it's like now it's on a shoestring. It's tighter for everyone.
Sure.
It's more a labor of love. It's more like how indie comics are usually made. And I attribute our love of it to the fact that we're still doing it. But I feel like getting the Eisner nomination for Black Cloak, in some ways, it was the most validating of all of them. Because we'd already made this sort of, I don't want to be like, I don't want to make it too dramatic, like we made this huge sacrifice, but we'd already made the decision to like sacrifice some stuff in our lives to devote time to this, even though there wasn't going to be as much upfront money. And so getting that Eisner nomination for it, it just makes you feel like you made the right decision. Like, you're like, yes, I knew, I knew this was good. And I just need to get it in front of more people's eyes, so it's good.
Yeah, no, excellent, man. All right, so yeah, come late summer, we'll get the next volume of Black Cloak underway. Wonderful.
Yeah, and there's a time skip in it, which I'm very sad that it's taken us so long to get to 7. But I have to say, I think the time skip will feel a little more, a little less drastic. Yeah, since people have had a real time delay as well of like a year, I guess, not quite a year since the last issue ended. So yeah.
Okay, that's fantastic. We talked about Substack with you and when it was ending. Is there enough time, or do you still need more time to process the Substack experience? Because truly, when I look back at what's been happening in comics, especially in the last 20 years, much like Kickstarter, Substack is really this interesting wrinkle. And I appreciate having conversations with yourself and Ilse Chartier and Tom King and everybody, Stegman and James Tynan. With thoughts on the whole Substack thing.
I mean, I'm incredibly grateful to it. Like, The Call and Black Cloak, I now have 2 Eisner nominations for 2 books that I'm incredibly proud of, 2 whole new pieces of IP that just don't exist without Substack. Like, there's no way those books are coming out without Substack. So I'm incredibly grateful for it. I'll always be grateful for it. It allowed me to pay people living wages for a year. It allowed us to make this great thing. But from the beginning, I think we talked about this before. I don't think any of us that came on board, I'd be shocked if any of us were like, Substack is going to completely change comics. It's just, I would say it's like you say, it's an interesting wrinkle. Or maybe a wrinkle is a negative. So it's an interesting pathway. Yeah. Is it going to change the dynamic of comics? Certainly not overnight. But it might be part of the conversation. It feels, I think, unfortunately, the parallel is to a thing that we probably all feel pretty negatively about, but we understand why it happens, which is the same thing that's happening with Patreon and everything else. It's like, if you want to support these creators, like, you have to like take it on yourself, which is a lot as a fan. There's only so many people you can support. There's only so long you can do that. It feels like a lot to put it on your shoulders, but it's also really rewarding to know that your money is going directly to a creator whose work you enjoy. And it reminds me in that respect a little bit of all of us being stuck with all these streaming services. Like, we didn't want it this way. If you were going to do it this way, could we have just kept the cable bill? Like, we didn't want we didn't want $55 bills,
I'm hip.
so I think it's in a transitionary period here where that's not really exactly what anyone wants, but you can see why it's happening and you can see the value in it. And you're like, is this going to morph into something that's going to fit a little better for me? And I think that's part of it, is like, we're just in a transitional space. I feel that about comics a lot these days. Like,
Yeah.
the graphic novel is more powerful than ever, but like, I really struggled to sell my now Eisner nominated books that I think have a lot of appeal, that are totally different books, by the way. Like,
Yes.
one of them's a detective procedural with much more cartoony art. I would say that the thing they have in common, other than me, most of all, is that they're colored spectacularly, different palettes. And then the Cull is like a hyper realistic mystery story kind of a thing, adventure story with
Yes.
younger protagonists. Like, those two books couldn't really be more different in the marketplace, and I struggled to sell both of them. And they're very high quality, as evidenced by the Eisner nominations. I feel very strongly about how good they are, and that's not a given. That's not a given for anyone, unfortunately, at this point. And that's scary in the marketplace. I mean, I'm sure there are names that are leveraged well enough that they can put out whatever new thing they're excited about and expect a certain amount of success. The Brian K. Vaughns and the Brian Michael Bendises of the world, who just really have that sort of cachet and that backing. But I think for most working writers, it's pretty scary out there, because you can have something that is really good and you can't be sure it's going to work.
I absolutely know, and you'll forgive me right now for the audio audience, so they know the fact that Kelly mentioned Patreon gave me the opportunity to put up the Word Balloon Patreon banner and remind
Yeah.
people they can support Word Balloon via Patreon. Part of the Substack agreement was creating a community that you would be in constant contact with. Have you since? Does that Substack community still exist, or have you taken it to Discord or someplace else?
No, I'm still using my Substack. I'm still posting.
Cool.
Black Cloak will still go up. And I'm really excited about a thing that my backers, I think, are very excited about, but I wouldn't blame them for not being excited because it's much delayed. I had to step on the gas pretty hard on some of the work for hire, because just the balance was sort of out of sync. I had not really done enough of the work for hire stuff. And so I was having some money, cash flow issues and stuff. So it's taking a lot longer to get this thing off the ground, but I'm doing a prose thing that's going to have a choose your own path element to it as we do it. So I'm very excited about the future of Substack. I think, especially with social media, such a shit show.
Yes.
It's been very helpful to me. It's also a place where, it's small still, our community, but that's a place where you can talk directly to me and to other collaborators and interviewees and people that I'm talking to. And you can also talk to each other, and it's not going to be like on Twitter where, it's just going to be a human conversation. There's moderation and it's great. So the community aspect of it has been great. And the agreement of the contract was something I think it was 100 posts in over a year. And yeah, I met that, and now I'm still posting. It's great.
That's terrific. And I hear you. And in fact, that's how I kind of look at my Patreon, that's the best place to talk to me. I mean, I'm lucky. I haven't gotten shit hammered like other people have on social media. And if I do, of course, you mute, you delete. It's a shame, Kel, because I hear you.
But it's even just the algorithm now. I mean, even if you're not dealing with harassment or bots or whatever, you just can't get your stuff seen. And all you have to do is do a quick look at, I'll do what other people do, which is use Bitly and other things to hide your link to Substack, but all that stuff has been throttled. So, for example, I have, I don't know, 47,000 followers.
Wow.
Something like that on Twitter. On Blue Sky, I only have, I don't know, 4,000 and some. So a fraction, 10%.
Oh, no,
right?
Same thing. Absolutely.
And while you still get more engagement and discussion on Twitter, it's not that much more. I mean, considering you're talking about 10 times the audience, and you can't get that much more engagement or retweets or likes or discussion, that's shocking.
I'm with you. And, it's so weird. I don't know if you feel this way. I'm glad you're still there on Twitter, which now, unfortunately, has officially become X. But my feeling is it's like Elon Musk is like this loud neighbor that just invaded our neighborhood. And I understand he owns most of the property there, but it's like, well, I was here first. So, no, until we have to pay for it, I'm not leaving Twitter.
Yeah, here's the real thing I don't get about Elon Musk on Twitter. This is a person who obviously cares about what other people think of him, and sure. I don't begrudge him that. I care too much about what other people think of me. I wish I had less of that. So, like, I don't think. I mean, it's a flaw, perhaps, but it's not. It's not unrelatable.
Sure.
But prior to him buying Twitter and becoming this main character that he became, I feel like people were pretty on his side.
I agree.
Like, there was, if you'd asked me, like, oh, what do you think of Elon Musk? I'd be like, well, he seems like he's doing interesting things in technology and science, and like, that's good. I'm interested in that, and like, maybe he can bring it to the masses in a way that like governments can't. Like, I'm okay. He's got to be the most hated man in the world now. And I mean, I know that he also has an incredibly huge fan base. I'm not trying to deny that. And I'm sure there's a way in which people are able to ignore, if you've got a large enough base, you're able to ignore the fact that, sure, 50% of these people love you and would lay down their life for you. But these other 50% of these people would maybe shoot you if they ran into you in the street. Like, that's dramatic, man. So I just don't know what he was thinking when he was like, I really care about what people think. I'm going to do this thing that's going to be insanely unpopular. I mean, I guess he just didn't think his ideas were going to be unpopular, but you can't come into something people love, even if it's flawed, and just start to put a wrecking ball at it and act really cavalier about it. I mean, he's destroying people's careers. I mean, he has hurt my career so much. Like, and I'm one of the lucky ones where I'm still standing and it didn't like completely wipe me out. Like, people will never forgive. He can't ever get those people back, ever.
I'm with you. Forgive me. Obviously, are you saying some of the negative responses on social media? Is that what you're saying in terms of Elon's? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just the general way people feel about him. I just think they liked him and now they hate him. And yes, he has his fan base, but it's outstripped for sure by the people. I mean, I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. When Tesla was first the thing, I was like, oh man, a Tesla, that'd be cool. I knew some people who got them. I was like, oh man, cool Tesla. That seems awesome. I maybe thought I wouldn't get a Tesla if it was the last car on earth. I would try not to get a Tesla now. And I think a lot of people feel the way I feel, whether it's justified or not. I just don't know the hubris. I don't know what he was trying to do.
I'm with you. And you know the irony, and forgive me for presuming, and I'm saying this as much for the audience, but the irony of calling his car Tesla, because he is the 21st century Thomas Edison, that when you first hear about him, you're like, oh my God, what a great inventor and what an amazing innovator. As a little kid, he was such a hero to me, Edison. And then I found out the real history behind Edison and how he messed with Nikola Tesla and all the other terrible things that he did to ruin other competitors. And it's like, oh my God, it's so like this is the Elon Musk story from an early 20th century point of view.
Yeah, it's like when you think you're the protagonist and you don't realize you're the villain in the story. But I'm speaking very outside my own zone here, my own areas.
Oh, please. So we're just talking. It's cool.
So let's take it with a huge grain of salt. But like, it seems really insulting to Nikola Tesla.
Yes,
he would call his company Tesla. I mean, separate from the whole Edison. Separate from that whole thing, which I think is another very good point. But even just if you don't go that deep, it's just like, that's a guy's name. He was like a whole famous guy who did all his own stuff. And now, like, many people will never know that. And they'll just think Tesla is the name of this stupid fucking car company.
I'm with you, buddy.
I guess it's not a car company. It's a, what do you call it? I don't know what it's called.
I don't know what you call it either, buddy.
Engineering company? What's the name? I don't know what it is.
Sure.
I'm not smart enough to know the name.
And the bitter irony that he will make millions from Nikola Tesla's name, who, obviously never achieved the heights in the 19th century or early 20th century, being in competition with Edison. No, I hear you, but yeah, no. Well, thank you for going down that road with me. I appreciate it. Now we'll get back to comics. It occurs to me, and forgive me because I thought I was pretty well versed in Marvel and DC, and I suppose they've tried recently in DC. Here, we're gonna shift to DC now, talk Birds of Prey, but about the DC universe in general, talking about Musk that way, that's kind of the hubris of Lex Luthor. And, his whole, I love what Jeff Johns did back in the day, deciding to go from mad scientist to, hey, look at all these wonderful gifts I've given to the world.
Yeah.
Aren't I the greatest human being ever? And then all of a sudden this asshole from Krypton shows up and steals my thunder. Is there, I know that in Blue Beetle, they've made Ted Kord's sister kind of that kind of character. Are there women that are in either the Marvel universe or the DC universe that have that kind of power and control and have been presented that way?
I mean, certainly not to the Luthor level. I can't think of anyone, but like Veronica Cale from the Wonder Woman books.
Sure.
She's, I mean, again, she doesn't, you say Lex Luthor to someone on the street and everybody knows what that is. So like, that's a very high bar to clear.
Yeah.
But if we lower the bar a little bit, I think Veronica Cale would be like that kind of person. I think Madame Mask is a little bit that kind of person. I mean, she's less a scientist and more just a crazy villain, but she does like run companies, and she'll often like work with, is it June Covington is the one that works with AIM, so like those sort of ladies doing that kind of thing. But yeah, I think, I mean, I guess I sort of write a lot of those kind of villain, like the businessman villain, because they're evil. I don't know. I feel like anyone has money at this point, it's just suspect. Like we're in such an eat the rich, like we're so headed there. Like you see it in all our media. I have a whole theory that I tell my partner about sometimes, and he looks at me like, just don't say that on a podcast, okay? So now I'm going to say it. I feel like the world is like softening us up for cannibalism a little bit. It's in so many stories. Yeah. It's like Soylent Green is coming and they're trying to get us ready for it or something. I don't know, man. It's pretty grim.
I'm with you. Good Lord. That movie used to scare the shit out of me, just because even though back then in the 70s, that's so far away. And I'm like, well, I'll still be alive when that stuff is happening. And when you see food scarcity and some of the air quote solutions that they're putting out there, it's like, yeah, what's really in that Impossible Burger? I'm not really. No, I'm hip, man. I get that. That's hilarious. But also, and again, Kel, you'll forgive me because this is from a guy's perspective, especially middle-aged man perspective. But I'm really glad that occasionally I see, as much as I think it's truly, honestly, wonderful that women are getting more agency in comics, not only on the creative side, but also in the stories as well. But it's like, well, there, and I guess Lex Luthor is too much of an extreme. So let's say Simon Stagg or Justin Hammer, some of the lesser, megalomaniacs that are in both universes and stuff. And it's like, there are bad women too. There are bad people of different orientation as well. And as much as I want to see those heroes, it's like, it's good every now. That's why I loved Doctor Who a couple of weeks ago when they had that music demon, and it was a trans music demon. And it's like, good. That's great, because you should show they're just bad people in the world. It doesn't matter what their sexuality, their orientation, whether they are people of color or not. And it's like, yeah, let's show some bad people that have those traits as much as heroes. Any thoughts on that?
I think it's really important to show that you should be able to have bad gay people, but in order to have bad gay people, you have to be regularly showing heroic gay people.
Sure.
And so I think that's the problem. There's just not enough, I don't know if parity is the right word, but there's just not enough consistent diversity that you can feel great about I'm very unlikely to create a bad Black woman character. I just don't even get to write enough Black women heroes. Like, I'm not going to create that villain right now, probably. So I think it's a little bit, you can try to push on it because, yes, we all want that. Anyone can be anything in that respect. You can be a villain, you can be a hero, you can be an anti-hero, you can be anything in between. And who you are, what you look like, doesn't necessarily define that. It certainly shouldn't. But until we've got more consistent diversity across the board, it's hard to create that, because you're reading a story and you're like, wait a minute, so this Black guy is trying to kill all these good white heroes, and you're like, wait a minute, it seems wrong. It seems like someone has a message. So until you balance it, it does feel a little fucked up. But I agree with you that it needs to not be that way, but we got to push across the board. You can't just push in the villain category. It has to happen everywhere.
You're so right, and truly you're right. There's a third rail danger of stepping on that and getting a wrong perception of what you're trying to do. So I can I guess
I write superhero comics for a living. I've been doing it for 10 years, and not created by me, just work for hire. Sure. I think I've only gotten to write, other than just like a one line or something, like I got to write Storm have a couple lines when Jeff the Land Shark bites her. But aside from that, like really getting to write, like, I think is it true that I've written 2 Black women? Like, that's upsetting, because I've written Monica a few issues and some arcs. Oh, well, I got to write Kamala for an arc, so that's good.
Okay.
Not a Black woman, but a woman of color, at least.
Certainly.
And then
currently, of course.
And Vixen, I'm writing on Birds of Prey, but like I'm sure there are more, but it shouldn't be that low. So you can see, so like you look at that and you go, yeah, I'm not really interested in creating a Black female villain right now, because that's all I've gotten to write for Black heroes in 10 years. Like, and I'm not blaming anyone. If anything, I should blame me. Maybe I'm not reaching enough for the right characters, but I just think that you got to look at the whole field,
No, I seriously, I appreciate you going down the path with me on this, because sure. I'm just curious. And I do think, as important as inclusion is and diversity, like I said, and that's why it was so, and it shouldn't surprise me, it was so surprising on Doctor Who. And it's like, well, it's Russell T Davies. Good for him. Good on him, man.
Well, and but I mean, I don't watch Doctor Who, so I'm a little out of pocket here, but I see enough ads and it's enough in my geekdom, overlap, that they're really pushing that stuff forward. They're really, you're seeing more diversity on that show. And so that fits,
Absolutely. All right, let's get into Birds of Prey, because first of all, it has Vixen in the past been in Birds of Prey?
She has. Not a ton, but she has definitely worked with the Birds of Prey before.
Okay. You'll forgive me, because I loved what you did in 7 and 8. And
thank you.
I'm going to show an image. And again, I don't mean it from a salacious standpoint, but woo, look at that.
I mean, listen, I can't believe you didn't use the Barda one, which is from the next issue, which is my phone screensaver. Thank you, Javier Pina.
Wow, that's great. That's fantastic. But truly, man, I just that was a great choice, Cal. And it's so great, because I really think you're thinking beyond the obvious to put the birds in weird situations like that.
I mean, they're an espionage team, and they've always been a sexy team. Like, I mean,
sure.
They were drawn by Ed Benez for a ton of time. They're a very sexy, like, I'm very like body positive forward. Like, so I thought, I wouldn't have tried a pair of issues like that, sort of playing with that exploitation. I wouldn't have done it with artists that I didn't know could handle it. Like, I completely would have done it with Leo. He would have done an incredible job on those. But, Javier Pina did issue 7, and he and David Lopez did issue 8. And like, those are artists, I know where they're coming from. I know we have a great line of communication. I know how they draw women. I know where their sort of sensibilities are. I don't have to worry about excessive male gaze with them. I know if I ask Javier Pina for Barda to strip off her clothes and fight in the middle of this double page spread, it's going to look incredible and powerful and funny, and will also be sexy. It can be all of those things.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean it would work with a different artist, or maybe with a different writer, or with different characters. Like, but I don't have any problem with, I got Low Grade famous many years ago by writing a big column on my She Has No Head. And
oh, wow. Yeah.
that was basically about the ways that female characters are sexualized in comics and how unbalanced it is between men and women. And, because of that, a lot of people want to believe I feel a certain way about these things, but I've got no problem with cheesecake. It just belongs where it belongs. And if you're going to wield that weapon, you need to know how to wield it and wield it correctly. So I was super excited to play with this. I think it pushes on things we worry about and talk about, but don't quite know how to feel about a little bit. And if I can do that and create a conversation and also tell a really fun superhero story, then, I'm delighted.
Okay, Kel, I'm so glad you brought up She Has No Head, because much like Women in Refrigerators, again, I think it was an important point to make at that time. When was that blog or those articles happening?
I think I started working for Comics Should Be Good in 2009. So
Okay.
it would have been 2009 through like 2014. By 14, I was sort of sliding out of it. I think I was still doing a few pieces in 2015, but that was when my book started first coming out. So that was when it started. Like, that was when I realized that not only did I need to put more time and effort into launching this career, but that it was a real conflict of interest at that point.
Sure.
To talk about stuff and write about stuff. So like, I felt like, oh, do I want to criticize this company that I'm going to try to pitch to? And then I'm like, well, that's fucked up that I feel that way. So that means no, don't do that. So it was like a whole journey to figure that out.
That's terrific. And then honestly, God, are they available anywhere? Those columns? Are they still up there?
Some of them are, probably not. I'm sure you probably find a lot of dead links if you went looking for them.
Well, there's
I'm
always
sure they exist in some format, but
yeah, there's the Wayback Machine as well, the Internet Archive, and and truly, just you'll forgive me, but the last 20 years, especially with my 20th anniversary coming up next year, it's really been on my mind, and I really do think it's a very significant era of comics where there was a lot of change for the good. I mean, there's the assholes, there's the idiots that obviously, why can't comics be like the way they used to be? Well, thanks. And they got to evolve. But no, honestly, I do think things like She Has No Head and Women in Refrigerators were really, I think, significant touchstones. And I'm glad that the Big Two recognizes that. And again, the DEI that we're seeing specifically in comics has been great. And I think it's one of the opportunities are there, not just for creators, but also to create characters that represent that.
Yeah. I mean, I just think there's, not, we don't have to talk about this forever, but I would say a perfect example of why this is powerful and how this has been doing well is you look at something like Alyssa Wong's Spirit World.
Sure.
Alyssa Wong being non-binary and writing a non-binary character and knowing how to deal with that in the text in a way that not only felt real and honest, but was powerful. It's like how they handle the dead name, and there's all sorts of stuff, but it's very well done. And I honestly, I was disappointed to not see it among the Eisner nominations. I felt for sure it would get some hits because I think it was pretty powerful stuff that was simple, but not really how we've seen Big to deal with these kind of things before. And why does something that powerful hit the stands? I think it hits the stands because Alyssa Wong is working at DC Comics. And that's a perfect example of how diversifying the voices of your creators can have this trickle down effect where you get really powerful stuff that you maybe haven't seen before. It's not always going to work, but isn't it worth it to get those gems,
Absolutely. Here's
especially because the alternative isn't always going to work either. and you might still get some gems, but you're not really risking anything, right? It's the safe play. So
I'm with you. No, that's great. There are some comments here from the chat about Birds of Prey. Damien says, I love what you're doing with Birds of Prey. I've been working on some pages that I got the chance to show Leo at
cool.
CCXP, which is the Columbus, Ohio expo that Tom Spurgeon started back in the day. I've been posting them on Instagram, but I hope to share with you later on X. That's cool.
That's cool. That's very cool.
Absolutely. Wesley says, I absolutely love Birds of Prey. I had no idea this is what we would get, but so happy to have it. DC Patrol. I'm adoring Birds of Prey, but had to stop reading because the colors were giving me a headache, really. But it's a beautiful and fun book that really gets all the characters involved. Really surprised with how great Zealot is, indeed.
I've heard this from a few people. Most people seem to love the coloring, but I have seen this comment before of people being like, is it in 3D? Why is it off register? It hurts my eyes. The thing I would say to it hurting your eyes is stop trying to make it not off register. Like, I feel like people feel like it's blurry. And so they're like, oh, I just need to squint to make it not blurry. It's deliberately off register. Like, no amount of squinting or looking at it closer or whatever is going to make it look sharp.
I'm with you.
So that would be my advice. I'm not trying to lecture anyone. The people who I've heard it from typically are people who are like, I really like this butt. And so my butt would be, stop trying to make it be something else. Let it just be off register. It's like the whole vibe is supposed to be like a pulpy retro feel. There's no level at which you can attain where you're going to see it perfectly clearly. It's deliberately off. And so I guess I feel like that's the only way I could understand why it's giving someone a headache, is if they're trying to make it look different. And so they're like putting a strain on their eyes to do that.
Sure.
Just don't do that.
No,
just read it. Just look at it and read the words and like absorb it, you know?
No, it's a visual effect to show that the birds are traveling through these dimensions right now.
Well, that's a whole separate thing. Like, we're still using the same effect we've been using on the quote unquote real world stuff that Gavin Guidry is drawing in the new arc. We are still using effects we are still using a similar effect, but because we're having different artists and different worlds for this current arc, Jordi is playing with those each time sort of anew to see how it fits with the new artists. In the case of last month's issue, number 9, or earlier this month, I guess I should say, that was DC Patrol. I'm not squinting. All right, I apologize. Why does it make your head hurt then? I truly want to understand.
Feel free to follow up, DC Patrol. There you go. No, I'm with you on that, and I love the palette that Jordi has been doing from the start. It's
I just think
dynamic.
She's approaching it so interestingly. It looks different on Javi than it did on Leo, and now, like in issue 9, I was saying from the last month, you know, with Jonathan Case, she did like a really desaturated thing where it was like these Victorian grays of Gotham, of like a weird Gotham, and it's just been really fun. It's been fun to play with it. I feel like sometimes, I don't know, a lot of people seem to be enjoying it, but sometimes it feels like they just want something really specific, and I don't know how to help people with that, because we're just having a really good time with these characters, and I'm not sure where to put that. Like, I'd love to give everyone exactly what they want, but I'd rather give them something they didn't know they want. So I don't know.
Well,
it's definitely not going to work for DC Patrol, who has stopped talking to me now that he thinks I've accused him of squinting. I'm sorry.
That's what Wesley said earlier too, when he said, you know, I had no idea this is what we would get, but so happy to have it. No, there's a dynamism or dynamic quality. I'm sure I said dynamism wrong, but a real energy that I think the way you write and the way all the artists and colorists are approaching this, that it really, I don't know, man. It's like you went up at a level. I've always loved previous creators on Birds of Prey, and I'm so glad the book exists, period. But you guys really have something going on. You people have something going on. I'm sorry to use the guy thing. Not meant to say, yeah, some people are like, hey.
I mostly use dude, so
well, good
for anyone. So
here, and DC did follow up. He said, I wish I knew. I normally love Jordy. It's just playing with me. I wish it could be pulpy without that effect.
How would it look pulpy if we took that off, though? Like I guess it could still look a little pulpy if you fix the off register thing, but I do think the off register thing is the most definitive thing to keep it to make it feel pulpy. Damien,
yes,
following up here.
Damien says, have you ever asked Jordy the reasons behind it's her, isn't it?
Yeah, it's her.
Okay,
it's her
colors, aside for the pulpy magazine comic book, like the very saturated pinks or blues.
I think the reason so Jordy and I experimented with something like this so Black Widow, the last arc of our Black Widow book. It basically, the last arc is 4 issues, and it does 2 issues, and then at the end of the second issue, a character shows up, and we can see that Black Widow is upset about it, and she knows who this is. And so the whole next issue is a flashback done with a different artist, and it's very clearly from like earlier in the Black Widow timeline where she had like the gray suit and the short hair, and she was in Madripoor all the time. So we just set this crazy neon drenched thing in Madripoor, and Jordy and I talked a lot about the colors we wanted for that, because I just deliberately wanted something that felt off registration. Sorry, there's a dog barking.
No problem, buddy. No, we can't hear it, but keep going.
Everything's fine.
Oh, okay.
No, it's good. I was worried for a minute, but it's fine.
Oh, no.
The cats were running around. Anyway, so I wanted specifically something that felt retro and pulpy because we were going to this flashback. So anyway, we came up with what I would call a more aggressive version of what we do here in Birds of Prey. And so we basically came back to that. She didn't specifically say she wanted to do that, but she said she wanted to play with some things, and she was excited to experiment on Leo. They have such a great working relationship. They really get each other. They really love each other's work. And so I think she felt like it was the perfect time to try something. And, I'm sorry it doesn't work for everyone, but I guess I would say, like, we got an Eisner nomination for off of 4 issues. Like, that was all that was out. Like, so I feel like even if it's not 100% for everyone, it's trying to do something different. It's trying to play with the form and to try some new things. And it must be liked enough that people see something in it. So I don't know that it will continue indefinitely. That said, I don't know what the justification would be for changing it either,
I hear you.
Well, I appreciate DC Patrol. I appreciate your attitude. I have to say thank you. And I'm sorry I accused you of squinting. I was really just trying to understand.
No, it's all good. And it reminds me, and I don't remember who the artist was, but I remember during Bendis's Daredevil run, he had a villain coming out of prison, and they flash back to him 20 years earlier, and they made the pages look like the old-fashioned printing process, where you would literally see the dots on that 4-color period of the 60s and the Bronze Age. Yeah. And it's like, and I love that. And I think that's great. And again, it's a visual medium. Yeah. You should be, and whatever the choices are, I'm for it. It's always interesting when Capullo turned the page upside down when he and Snyder were doing Batman and stuff, something that basic. But no, when you really get into off register and different palettes and stuff, it's like, that stuff is exciting.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. Most of the time I would say that a technique like this, I would be much more in love with it if it was very story based, choice. But I love that we're doing it, and I don't want to stop. I think it's interesting. I think my justification was that Birds of Prey is like an older title and that it hasn't been around consistently or a lot recently. And so doing it as like a retro. I'm sorry, I'm worried there's someone in my yard. Hold on.
Oh, by all means, Kel, no problem. Truly.
Guys are about to see me get murdered on.
No, God forbid. And yeah, no.
On a live podcast. It's exciting. It's exciting. Hey guys, what's wrong? Is it okay back here? Hold on. This is the first time. I think this is the first time I've ever gotten up on a podcast and been walking around with the laptop.
Take your time, buddy.
Breaking new boundaries here.
This is what happens with live video or live audio.
It looks like everything's fine. My cats are just being fraidy cats, which is appropriate, I suppose. But like an example of it being used, of something like this being used, I think in a really smart way, would be like Donnie, that crossover book, that Donnie Cates image book. Like, you know, when you're really talking about a universe breaking up or people within a world being, some people are drawn and some people are colored in, and, you know, like,
sure,
to really approach that art. I love that stuff. And I just think comics is such a unique medium. Why wouldn't we be playing with all of this stuff we can do, you know?
I'm with you. I'm so with you on that. That's terrific. Gil Herme, I hope I'm saying that right. Kelly, would you like to bring back some old Birds of Prey characters at some point? Yes, you brought Sin back, indeed, currently in the story. Characters like White Canary, Lady Blackhawk, or Savant and Kraot.
White Canary is definitely on my radar as a possibility, but it will have to be the right story, which I don't have yet. Savant and Kraot are maybes. Okay. I like them, but I don't know. This is going to sound...
No, whatever you like. I mean, you know.
It's going to sound sort of shitty and calculated, but you know, there is sort of an art to like not getting canceled, and I'm not great at it so far, as many people who watched my books get canceled know. You know, like a lot of people, when Harley Quinn was on the team at first, there were a lot of people yelling that DC had decided it. And then I was like, DC did not decide it. And then after that, it became, well, she just knows the book has to sell. And so she's put her on. And I was like, I mean, honestly, it didn't think about it at all. I'd probably be better at selling comics if I did think about it more. I just tend to think about the characters that I'm interested in and how they're going to play against each other in the book.
Sure.
But after I did that, I'm like, oh, it's a good thing Harley's here. That's good. I was like, at this point, I feel like she's got as many haters as she's got super fans. So it sort of crosses itself out a little bit. But, you know, it's not a lot of people going, hey, I can't wait to read more Savant. Like, so, you know, but I do feel like there are a bunch of people going, hey, where's Vixen? And why isn't she in more books? And so like, then I'm like, yeah, I'd like to see Vixen like tear it up on some Birds of Prey. So, where's Scott Free nowadays?
Yes, we'll get to that in a second, but I got to say, because among the characters mentioned, I'm a big Lady Blackhawk fan, and I kind of like her superior attitude, that she really was kind of a central negative character to bring in the birds when, if it was Gale writing it or whatever, that I'm like, and especially coming from that World War II background and everything. I mean, she's kind of like Captain America, where she's like this character out of time and may not have, you know, the same unity feelings that the other birds might have and stuff.
Yeah. I'm not super big into that character, to be honest. Like I don't ever like telling people that, because I don't want them to feel hopeless about it. Like, it doesn't mean she couldn't show up. But another thing is, like, I'm just not playing with a team that needs a helicopter right now or a pilot. You know, we're doing a boom tube. We're going through portals. Like, you know, it's like, it's just not really the vibe we're doing right now. It doesn't mean she couldn't show up down the line. But I also just don't know that I have a great handle on her. I mean, I read all those Gale issues she's in, but I just don't have the connection maybe that you'd want, you know? I also think, like, it's nice when I get a lot of very kind fans who are like, oh, I'm dying for you to write so-and-so. And, you know, sometimes it's someone I'm interested, sometimes it's someone I'm not. But like, I think you have to remember that part of the reason writers that you like sometimes take on a character and do something amazing, it's because they're a huge fan of that character and they've been thinking, for a year or their whole life or whatever,
Sure.
like to get their hands on it. Like, what's the Batman story? So like, I do feel that way about like Barda and Cass and Black Canary to a degree, and Maps, Mizuguchi, and a lot of characters, but
Sure.
I don't feel that way about Lady Blackhawk. So it might take me a while to get there.
No, and I can listen. I've experienced the same thing in my creative circles. If you're not excited about what you're doing, it becomes a chore. And no disrespect for a character that you may not feel engaged with or whatever. That's fine. Absolutely.
But it also, just to like not make it sound too dire, I famously learned my lesson quite early, actually, because one of my first books I ever wrote for the big two was a Marvel book called A-Force, which is all female Avengers.
Love that book.
And when I inherited that book, the first question I asked was, can I change the team? Because I was not interested in Medusa. And I didn't like Dazzler.
Okay.
And the reason I didn't like Dazzler is because I'm a Rogue fan. And if you go far enough back, Rogue and Dazzler have beef. And so I had beef with Dazzler. But that's not a way for a comic book writer who's going to write these stories. You can't be petty like that. So I was like, all right, let me let go of these feelings about Dazzler. Marvel was like, no, this is the cast we need. I'm like, great. So who ended up becoming my two favorite characters on that team? Dazzler and Medusa. Now, I really am I have a lot of affection for that whole team. She-Hulk especially, she was probably my favorite character going into that. And Nico Minoru is so great. I just butchered her name. I'm sorry, Nico. But Dazzler, Medusa, Ben Caldwell did the sexiest Medusa design, like a curvy, amazing, just a queen. She was incredible.
Sure.
And she was so fun to write. And then I was having trouble with her because she is a queen. She should be the leader of the team, but she's also there with Captain Marvel and She-Hulk, who are also sort of total team leaders.
Yes.
And I wanted She-Hulk leading. And so what I did, instead of like just trying to have it not make sense, I had them arguing about it. And then I had Medusa sort of basically lose, and everyone was looking to She-Hulk. And so she became like this sort of sullen teen on the group, where she was like enjoying not being in charge. And she became so fun. I totally fell in love with writing her. And then Dazzler, because she never shows up in anything else, there was a lot of freedom around her. And so what I learned was not to go in with these preconceptions, and that doing the work itself would end up really making me fall in love with the characters. So the truth is, if I bring Lady Blackhawk into something, I'll probably end up falling in love with her too. It's what always happens.
That's okay. All right, now let's address Damien's question. Where is Scott Free nowadays?
I mean, I think this is people who are responding to
Solo
mostly when I get this question, it's people going, wait, I read Mr. Miracle. Why is Barda in this Birds of Prey book? And I think the technical answer is, and I mean this is no disrespect, Mr. Miracle is literally one of my favorite books of all time. I just reread it this spring, and my God, it's just masterful.
Yeah.
So it's no disrespect to that book, but that isn't in canon technically. Like, I don't think.
Oh, I see. Tom's book is not technically in canon. Keep going.
It's Black Label. So
sure.
So I don't know where Scott is, but I'm not basing this Barda on like, hey, she just came out of that crazy situation over there. I'm treating it a little looser.
Well, and also
which I think you sort of have to.
Yeah, and forgive me for interrupting, but honestly, it's like as much as we see certain couples always together, it's nice to see Barda getting, even in this teen book, her own adventures and stuff. She's a wonderful character, and I don't think it's as explored prior to what you're doing with her in Birds. In fact, you'll forgive me, but I'm even going to put up is it next week's issue, issue 10?
Yes.
So there we go. That's the cover for number 10, everybody. I already got a chance to read it because DC is awesome and lets me read advanced copies of things. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh no. And again, it's like no. It's because if you put Barta with different characters and Scott's not there, you're going to get different conversations. And I mean, that's really been
Exactly. This is my whole argument with people who wanted all the same characters on the Birds of Prey. And I'm like,
Sure.
but I don't want to do that. We've already seen that. I want to
Absolutely.
bang some different characters together. And listen, I think that the good news is that the Barta cast thing, more than anything, seems to have swayed a lot of people that felt like they knew what they wanted in a Birds of Prey. Like maybe they can't agree that they still want the team that they have, but they're all admitting that Barta and Cass are magic together. And that doesn't happen if I'm not allowed to put them in the book together and smash them into each other. But this is the thing, like we were talking about this a little bit before, the difference between giving fans what they want and giving them something they didn't even know they want. That is basically the butchering of a David Simon quote from The Wire, and from doing The Wire, not from the actual show The Wire.
Oh no,
I think that I don't think I'm anywhere near David Simon, but it's not wrong to strive for that, right?
Amen.
Those are what you want to aim for. So
yeah, that's it's my rote description of a comic book sometimes is Superman crashes through the wall, the gangsters start shooting, the bullets bounce off him, he clunks their heads to make him unconscious, he grabs Lois and he flies away. It's a trope. We love it. We've seen it a million times. It is the more introspective and left field ideas that make us go, wait a minute. And really the Mr. Miracle book is a great example of that. A lot of the Black Label books are examples of that. God, I had that amazing. I've been rerunning a lot of conversations with Eisner nominated people, and I reran my episode with Priest about Superman Lost, and it was
cool.
It's such an atypical Superman story. And again,
it really is.
Yeah, and that's the thing, man. It's like no, and sometimes when you provoke people with a left of center story, they are disappointed. It's like, well, wait a minute, man. I want my meatloaf and mashed potatoes, and you're serving me, a completely different menu. And it's like, yeah, but, like, give it a chance. You might like this as well. And isn't it great to not know what to expect from the next issue? And certainly Birds of Prey has been like that because of these people you've put together.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make it like, oh, my job is so hard, guys. Like, it's the worst. No, it's a great job. I love it. But it is really hard to create new superhero archetype stories. I mean, you're doing it, I don't know if you're lucky twice a year, but probably you're doing it 3 times a year for one book. And then you're recreating, and then you're doing that. Like, there's a formula for a reason. The formula is there to help you. I love the formula. You also have to stray from the formula or die. Like, I sometimes when people are big fans and they're like, oh, I read everything you do, I'm like so grateful and so overwhelmed by that feeling. But it also worries me a little bit because am I always pushing enough? Like any writer, I have certain themes I come back to, things I like to revisit. Sometimes I tried something somewhere and it only sort of worked, but I think now I've figured out how to do it better. That's talking about the same thing. So like, you hope you're constantly bringing something new, but you have to be vigilant about it. Like, you can just rest and do the formula. There's a formula. Here's what it looks like. And it can get you through. But at some point, it feels less like you're creating art or taking any kind of risk and more like you're coloring something in.
I'm happy. Yeah. Well, again, you're certainly managing to do it in Birds. And again, give us a Birds of Prey story that is different enough, but still the same. And I think achieving it, that's one of the reasons why you're nominated, Kellen. I'm really glad about that. Absolutely. Here, DC Patrol, I'm so impressed with how you get each of the characters' voices. I love how you balance them all. And by the way, would love to see Mara on there for a bit. Sure, why not?
Mara would be fun for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like Mara and Barta might be a problem in a fun way. Like,
interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. No,
Yeah.
I like that kind of thinking. There you go.
Yeah, that might be fun. That might be fun.
And Damien says Cass and Barta, their thing is the thing that made me do the pages in the first place. So yeah, his pages that he's doing, I really love them and drawing them.
Aw,
And thank
so
you so
nice.
much, Kel. I really appreciate your work. Yeah. Oh, and then yeah, obviously DC very happy that you're
Yeah.
intrigued about the Mara possibility.
They know what I'm talking about.
That's great. No,
Well,
and by the way,
I already had Barta and Vixen going at it a little bit, but in like a nice way. Like they were
sure.
just salty with each other for a minute, and then they were like, "Yeah, demigods suck, don't they?" And then Megara's like, "Hey, I resemble that remark." Like just cartoon characters.
And by the way, mentioning A-Force, I don't understand why that's not a regular book at Marvel. That's my editorial comment, because truly, when Willow came out with it, and then when you took it over as well, it's like this is so long overdue. And again, it's a middle-aged white guy saying this shit, but truly, like when Rucka and Mike Perkins were doing the Lois Lane book, it's like, why hasn't there been a consistent Lois Lane book since it was started back in the 50s? She's a great character. And all the women deserve their own super team. Just it just makes obvious sense. And the excitement again for conversations we wouldn't normally get in a different team book or even individual books.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too much of a bitch about it, but there's a reason that Birds of Prey is the first thing I asked for when I walked over to DC. So
That a girl. Is there and I don't want to spoil any possible marketing plans. Will we be hearing about other DC titles from you in the future?
I believe you will.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I'm not sure when announcements will be, but I think fall, you'll start seeing some stuff in the fall, I guess.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
that's going to be an excuse for me to bug you in a few months. And
I'm very excited about it. It's some of the most ambitious stuff I've ever tried to do. We're still just, I don't want to say some of the most ambitious stuff I've done because we're still trying to do it. So but I'm confident we'll get there. It's pretty exciting.
That's terrific, Kel. I'm really glad to hear it. And truly, we're weeks away from the Eisners. I really hope that, you got 5 shots here, so you need more hardware. But even again, and as I was telling you off there and stuff, it is such a trite thing. Oh, it's really an honor to be nominated. It is, obviously, and you've certainly had that before. But my God, to truly, I really think the odds in your favor to pull a little more hardware, having 5 different nominations. But all 4 books, and truly as best writer as well. What a wonderful acknowledgement of the great work that you're doing, and that people get it. And that's I know what every writer hopes for is they understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's really the thing. I mean, like the nominations, I really it really is a lot that it just feels like what's that famous Sally Field? You like me, you really, really like me. Like it's funny, that went viral for a reason, even before things went viral, man. It's because that is like, if you boil everything down, that's how that feels when you get nominated for something like that. But I do think like looking, like you hear the nominations and you're like, oh my God, that's so exciting. You're like, yes, surely 5 nominations. We gotta get a couple of those. And then you go look at who you're nominated with and you're like, oh man, these are good. These books are good. And like, of course they're good. They're the best in their field, but like, it's easy to, I don't know. I don't know how anyone could expect to win after they get nominated, because the first thing that happens to me is I look at who we're up against and I go, oh no, that book, people love that book. Like, so it's a real humbling experience, but I think it also feels like this real endorsement of your work that you get to stand next to these other books, and it feels great.
That's terrific. And I can tell you firsthand that, or secondhand, I suppose, I just talked to Tom Taylor the other day, and he was congratulating the fact that you got 5 nominations and everything, and rightfully so.
That's so nice. That's so nice. He and Bendis gave me some of the best advice I'd ever gotten separately. It was just, I happened to reach out to both of them. I think the Bendis thing was when I was doing Jessica Jones. It was around the same time, but I was asking him specifically something about Jessica Jones. And then, but it was the Rogue and Gambit. I was trying to figure out how to do Rogue and Gambit. And Tom gave me some really good advice that was basically amounted to, do what you want. And I remember thinking, yeah, that's easy for you to say, Tom King. Like,
Sure.
people don't just go, oh, Kelly, do whatever you want. But I do think he's right. Like, because there's the other part of do what you want is be bold, right? It's don't pull your punches, don't second guess yourself. Like, you have to be confident on the page, even if you're not feeling that, because readers will feel it and you'll have a problem. And
Agreed.
yeah,
No, trust your taste. And
yeah.
as a reader, I can say I like your taste. So
Thanks.
absolutely, buddy. No, congratulations. Honestly, I love the different directions this conversation went, and I appreciate you being willing to go in some of these directions because a lot of this is extemporaneous. When DC or Marvel are like, can you give us the list of the questions you're going to ask? I'm like, no, I don't know what I'm going to ask, other than the obvious that I'm going to promote the books. So reminding everybody again, and let's go through the laundry list here. You could pick up the trades of the Cull and Black Cloak, and a new arc of Black Cloak starting in August. And next week we got Birds of Prey. And what am I forgetting? Jeff, of course.
Scarlet.
Oh shit! I'm sorry, we didn't even talk about it.
Next week, number 1.
Wow, Scarlet Witch, which Scarlet?
No, sorry, G.I. Joe, Scarlet.
Holy shit! Oh, that's great, Kel.
Yeah, we broke all kinds of pre-sale records. It's crazy.
Oh my god!
They did like a Bleeding Cool thing on it and everything. It's
Give
great.
me 5 minutes on Scarlet. Who's your artist? And
Marco Ferrari is my artist. Lee Lowridge is coloring.
Wow.
It's really fun. It's really fun. I think before when it was just a script and it was a pitch and a script, it was sort of like Scarlet, Bond, Mission Impossible vibes. But I think Marco has like a more frenetic style, and parts of the story make it feel this way too, where it feels a little more John Wickian.
Okay.
It's really fun. It's got a lot of action, heavy on action. It's 5-issue miniseries, and it should be incredibly new reader friendly, because one of the really cool things Skybound has done in this building of this new Transformers G.I. Joe Energon universe is they've done it in these small pieces with these miniseries and things that help to basically, because basically G.I. Joe doesn't exist yet in my Scarlet book. Like, people are still beginning to put it together to answer the threats that are coming up. And so you're meeting Scarlet before she's a Joe. She's in the military, in some branch of the military, and she gets sent on this incredibly dangerous mission that has a couple parameters, but one of which is, for her, the prime reason to go is because her very good friend and like a sister to her is Jinx, the character Jinx. And she's been missing for 2 years and no one will talk to her about it or whatever. So that's Scarlet's big impetus for going. And so she comes in contact with the Storm Shadow and the clan Arashikaji. So it's all very ninjas and badassery.
That's fantastic. When does it start?
First issue is next week, the 5th.
Wow, excellent. Along with Birds of Prey 10.
Yes, Birds of Prey 10, and yes, correct.
Very cool. That's fantastic.
And there should be new It's Jeff, but I don't think that will be coming out until the fall. And I'm hopeful there will be a printing of the 3rd season. I would assume they're going to do it. DC Patrol, Joshua Williamson does the Duke book and the Cobra Commander book, and then I assume he's doing more books that come after Scarlet and Destro, which are the ones that are launching in June. Dan Waters is the writer on Destro. I'm sorry, I don't have the artist's name handy.
No worries. And I shame on me, but yeah, I get my Skybound press releases, and
that's okay. I mean, there's not to go into a whole other discussion when we should be wrapping up, but it's a lot of stuff out there, man.
There's a lot of stuff.
Even if you're super engaged like you and I are,
yes,
it's too much. It's too much, and that's like this thing that people are always talking about. The market is stretched so thin, and yes, part of the reason a lot of books are struggling is because there are too many books. But like, what books are you going to cut? Like, I see a
Right.
lot of really great stuff. Is this the greatest time of comics, like this decade? Like, I mean, it's the things people are doing are incredible. So what are you going to cut? I don't know. But I'm not surprised that you didn't see among, the weekly drop of books,
Right.
every little thing. Like, it's a lot.
And so many quality books. Absolutely. No, this is a great, it's the best of times in the one sense of quality.
Yeah.
And yes, it's certainly stretching your dollar if you're trying to keep up with
it. Best of times for your brain, worst of times for your wallet, I guess.
Amen. Amen. Well, there you go. And DC Patrol saying the same thing. I'm buying more than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough out there, everybody. But thank God it's at least quality that is worth picking up. And I'm really glad that, again, you're getting these acknowledgments for the great work you're doing. So way to go. And again, thanks a lot for the directions the conversation went tonight. It really meant a lot.
I had a great time. Thanks,
buddy. Kelly Thompson, everybody. Tomorrow I've got a doubleheader. Well, actually, I'm recording an episode with Heather Antos, and we're going to record something and it'll probably present it over the weekend. But also, my buddy Dave Wachter coming on.
Please say hi. Please say hi to Heather for me. Oh yeah,
sure I will.
She's the best.
Sure I will. No, it's my first conversation with her. I've been dying to talk to her since her Marvel days. And I'm an uber nerd about Star Trek, as President Biden acknowledged at the beginning of the show.
I'm sure between the two of you, then my name won't come up. But
well, maybe before we start recording, I'll mention it. Don't sweat it. But yeah, and then Friday, Andy Diggle will be joining me in the afternoon, American time zone time. But Friday evening for Andy, and again, another first conversation. I'm trying to make up. Last week I kind of took time off and threw up a lot of reruns that are good conversations, including one with yourself. But yeah, I'm trying to make up for lost time. So a busy week at Word Balloon means more stuff to listen to and watch for the Word Balloon audience. So thanks, everybody. Thank you, Kel. Until next time, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.